Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Claudia Chimendia, and I'm a research coordinator with FIU's Jack D. Gordon Institute for Public Policy. As research coordinator, I have had the privilege of managing the development of the China influence in Latin America and the Caribbean dashboard that you saw earlier today. The next fireside chat with Ambassador to the Organization of American States, Leandro Rizzuto Jr., will talk about securing Americas through the international cooperation. This is especially important in understanding U.S.-Latin America relations because of the shift in regional geopolitical dynamics, the need for a unified response to shared security threats, and the importance of fostering resilient, transparent partnerships. This fireside chat will be moderated by Adrienne Ross, Senior Advisor on U.S. Foreign Policy and Global Affairs. She has served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Strategic Communications at the U.S. Department of State, as well as Senior Advisor to the Department's Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs. So please join me in welcoming our distinguished guests. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Ambassador, it's so nice to see you. Thank you, everyone. And President Trump has called our next guest a true patriot and one of the most talented businessmen he's ever met, which is quite a compliment coming from President Trump. Today, Leandro Rizzuto joins us in his official role as U.S. Ambassador to the Organization of American States, a post he was sworn into last fall. The ambassador built a decades-long career at the Conair Corporation, where he began in the warehouse operations, rising to Senior Vice President of Global Professional Units. He also served in the previous Trump administration as U.S. Consul General in Bermuda. It's a nice post if you can get it. Originally a Northerner, Ambassador Leandro now calls Florida home, not too far from here. And today I'm thrilled to welcome him to Florida International University's HSC stage. Thank you, sir, for being here.
Thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you and this fabulous audience and also this incredible campus. My first time here, and I have to say, I'm incredibly impressed, the breadth and the scope of what takes place at this university and on this campus. It's really a gem for the state, but also both the hemisphere and the world.
Sir, your career has spanned an incredible trajectory. You started in the warehouse of your family's business, so you shot up to great things running Conair Corporation. Can you talk a little bit about your choice to enter domestic politics? Why did you choose to do that, and how has all this hard work that you've done previously influenced your public diplomacy and your politics when you're representing the U.S. government?
Sure. I think it's hopefully a good message for the student body here as well as your guest. I spent my life in the industrial sector, working in a family business and having the opportunity to travel the world many times over. The days were long, the weeks were never ending, and the travel, it was always the number one day of the year that I had the most anxiety was always January 1st.
Why was that?
Because I had so many commitments throughout the year that I had this calendar that was pre-populated at a level of minimum 80%. So on January 1st, and I look at my calendar, 80% of the year was already taken up.
Oh my gosh.
And it was commitments all over the world. Our business was very much influenced by trade shows and conventions that took place around the world. So quite often, maybe it's only 1 or 2 times per year for that particular country. So I couldn't miss it. It was too important to that country to not attend and see the customers or the suppliers or various relations that we were developing. So everyone is important. So like I said, the full year became populated. But for me, although it was in fact anxiety, it was never work. My life was driven by passion. Literally from the age of 5 years old, my dad would bring me into the office, the warehouse, And our business started in the family basement. My grandfather invented a wire hair roller that became the start of our company. And I remember as a little kid, literally 5 years old, sitting at a table in the factory, putting rollers together with these older women. And I loved it. And from that workstation, going throughout the warehouse and repair department and engineering department and marketing department and taking on sales and manufacturing operations, it was always passion and never particularly viewed as work, although certainly at times somewhat exhausting.
So you were busy, but not necessarily in a rat race. You were enjoying what you were doing.
Absolutely. Like I said, it was a passion, and that really is a messaging for everyone in the room, because you should pursue a path and a career of love. Whatever that might be fixated on it. Do not dilute your efforts in 10 different directions. Make yourself an expert, certainly in one to begin, and later in life, if you want to branch out, that's fine. But pick a pathway and become an expert in that pathway.
Well, let's talk a little bit then about your switch to politics. And was there a moment in the warehouse that you thought, oh my gosh, why we need this? This isn't happening?
So for 50 plus years, there was no politics. We didn't actually even recognize ourselves as Republicans or Democrats. The family was never involved in campaigns or anything like that. And I guess it was also different eras and a different world. But at a point in time in my life, which was 2016, I had this ability to step away from the business. And at that time, it was when President Trump came down the golden staircase, as we so much recall. To me, it wasn't about him. But what I noticed in someone that was never involved in politics, I saw this guy on a stage and 16 other guys taking, dirty shots at him. And everybody was taking shots at this one particular guy. And I thought about it, and I was like, this is interesting, because we gave all these different politicians a chance to be president, and you can measure the jobs they did. We came off the most recent president prior to Trump, and lackluster results. So I had a particular opinion, which was, I don't really care what party he is. He's a Republican, he's a Democrat. He's a businessman. I want to see a businessman have an opportunity to do the job, because generally business people are results-oriented, they're solution-focused, and they're driven that way. And I reached out actually to the family, and I said, I want to help this guy become, your dad become president. I actually met the president several times prior, but it was different circles. It's not really that we had any significant personal relationship.
So you saw a businessman to a businessman, and now you're serving at the OAS, but you previously served in Bermuda as the U.S. General Counsel. So let's fast forward a little bit and talk about how your experience in Bermuda has shaped what you're doing now at the OAS.
So I think it's very poignant to talk about Bermuda and business alike, because when I arrived to Bermuda, it was during COVID. And there were all types of issues going on in Bermuda and the world. Mm-hmm. And when I arrived there, I'm not the type that sits on a beach and drinks pina coladas. You'll never see, if you saw me do that once or twice a year, I do it just to be polite to my wife, but and that'll only be for about 10 minutes. So I get to Bermuda, and immediately I start meeting with the various political leaders in the country, the business leaders in the community, and the cultural people in the community. And I'm going around the country, which is not a very big country, by the way, but so for the first couple of weeks, in each of those meetings, whether it was political, cultural, business, I kept hearing this message, which was, when are we going to get mail? When are we going to get the mail restored to Bermuda? So what I learned was American Airlines had the contract to deliver mail to the country, and then it was taken over, from the countryside locally, but it was their job to deliver it by air to the country. And because of COVID, they stopped flying their passenger flights, so they just stopped delivering the mail. And prior to myself arriving to Bermuda, there was somebody, a career person in that post that then got moved out of country to another location. I get there and I hear this message for 2 weeks, and I go back to my staff. I said, what's going on? And they said, oh, American Airlines, this and that. I said, okay, get Washington on the phone. This is unacceptable. So we get the Postmaster General on the phone, we get State Department on the phone, we get everybody we need to on the phone, and I point out to them, I said, Delta is flying. I said, I don't need to read the American Airline contract. I could tell you right now, they're in default. It's literally months and months that they haven't delivered the mail. It really must have been an act of God besides my own tenacity, because somehow, start to finish, in a 3-week period, we get an announcement from the post office master that mail is being restored to Bermuda. They signed a deal with Delta. And unbeknownst to me, when I started this process, there was 13 other countries that they also stopped delivering mail to American. So the postmaster signed the contract with Delta for these 14 countries. And this is the life lesson. You don't have to accept no. You don't have to accept complacency. And you don't have to accept barriers that are put in front of you. Because I said no, and this is unacceptable, and pushed as much as I had to push to make sure that the result was achieved, it happened. Like I said, I consider it miraculous in government when you could do anything in 3 weeks. But the part of the story I'd just like to conclude with, shortly after this announcement, and remember, and it's during the COVID days, there was a local nurse that used to do my testing. Anytime you went in and out of the country, you had to do a pre-test, an arrival test, a 3-day test, a 7-day test, a 4th. They were pretty extreme with that testing. The nurse who we became friendly with comes to me and was thanking me profusely and telling me, you have no idea what you did. I said, I did my job. What do you mean, I have no idea? So the nurse told me, you need to understand how important the mail is to the people in Bermuda. A local resident actually died waiting for their medicine in that mail.
It's incredible.
So again, my take on it was I did my job, and I was incredibly happy to make the people happy. And that's what happens when you bring a business acumen, perhaps sometimes to government and a political post, because you're going to approach problem solving in a results-oriented way. And you could be perhaps also a visionary and see solutions that the person before me never picked up the phone and called Washington and said unacceptable.
Correct. But you are at the OAS now, which it has lots of different issues that need problem solving. So talk a little bit about what that problem solving attitude you are using, how you're using it at the OAS, and what is the role of the OAS right now when we're talking about so many issues that are impacting the hemisphere so significantly.
So let me start with going back to the pina colada.
Okay.
So for the last 8 years, bumping into the president at different events in different circles, he incredibly kindly, whenever he would see me, no less than a dozen times, he said to me, unprovoked, anywhere you want to go, it's yours. He knew I liked the diplomatic route, and basically was telling me, whatever post you want to go to, you have first choice. And I don't drink pina coladas, especially now my diet. I try to avoid sugar and carbs. So I did my research. I really didn't know much about OAS, but once I researched and learned about OAS, I knew this was the place for me. Mm-hmm. So what is OAS? Does the room, raise your hand if you know what OAS is. All right, I'm impressed.
you're-
Far more than normal.
you're in a
Far
very
more than normal.
OAS
Because
crowd.
I will try to, perhaps conjure a little, laugh amongst you, which when I was nominated by the president to be the U.S. Ambassador Permanent Representative to the Organization of American States, I received calls from my lifetime of travel from all over the world. Congratulations, congratulations, congratulations. All the calls from my American friends went like this. Congratulations. What is that?
Well, this is a pretty international crowd. So.
Well, I'm very impressed and very happy about that. But I knew literally from my first day, part of my job is branding OAS and letting the American taxpayer know what they're paying for. Now let me talk about a little bit why I chose this pathway and wanted to go to OAS as opposed to drinking the pina colada somewhere. OAS, I humbly refer to as the UN of the Western Hemisphere. It's every country from Canada to Argentina and the entire Caribbean. There's 35 countries in our Western Hemisphere. There's 3 in a suspended state, but hopefully with things that are going on not for long, Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua. The OAS as an organization was formed in its current capacity in 1948. But actually the roots of OAS go back to 1826. And Simon Bolivar, who called the Congress of Panama, had a meeting in 1826 with the intention of bringing the nations together. And the United States was actually one of those nations. Interestingly enough, Simon Bolivar it should be iconic and ironic today because he gave Venezuela its freedom back in his day.
Well, he was known as the liberator.
Yeah,
yes,
so
of course.
Incredible history and connection to OAS and what's going on in the world today. So I arrive at OAS, and literally on my first day, I'm engaging with 32 ambassadors of the hemisphere. But there's an additional component which is quite complementary to OAS. There's literally 75 permanent observers, most of them independent nations. But you even have EU as the body, in addition to most of the Western European countries. And you even have the Holy See, the Vatican, as a permanent observer.
And China.
And China, which was actually one of the questions when you go through the confirmation process through the United States Senate. Both sides have this job to beat up the candidates, and rightfully so. They should want to make certain the person that they're going to confirm is competent to do the job. So one of the questions both sides enthusiastically, challenged me on, what are you going to do about China as an observant member of the OAS?
Right. It's a popular question in Washington.
I said, well, that's actually a pretty easy question. They're like taken back. Why do you think it's easy? I said, are you aware that currently there's no language and criteria defining what an observant member is? So basically any country could become an observant member if they choose to.
Right.
So I said, if you're telling me that China shouldn't be an observant member because they're communists, then we should create criteria that observant members could only be democratic nations. And then we initiate a campaign, because everything is done by vote there. The United States has 1 vote amongst currently 32. So sometimes, simple resolutions, you need 18 votes to change the charter. You need 22 currently. So that's the process. And we approach that process by taking like-minded nations, coalescing, our thoughts and positions, and then reaching out to the other nations. And quite often, 70, 80, 90, 100% of these nations vote together. It's tremendously important to recognize that, as well as impressive, because at the UN, it's 30% or less, which was another question. The Senate got much enjoyment directed to me, both sides, again, the majority, minority, and they said, are you aware that the United States pays 49% of the total budget of OAS? I said, oh, okay. What are you going to do about it, Mr. Rizzuto? I said, well, again, that's easy.
Okay, but
I said, number one, I'll find out what is the correct percentage that it should be. I said, but understand something. You're paying $50 million for the sovereignty and democracy and the relationships that we have solidifying the hemisphere versus $14 billion that you pay at the UN. I said, that $50 million, whether the percentage is too high or too low, is the best investment you have in the United States. I can tell you that hands down. So I went through the Senate pretty well. Actually, in the Democratic side, the committee who interviews you first, he ended the questioning.
Yeah.
He turned to his boss. He said, I got no more questions. I like this guy.
Okay, well, let's go back to China. Where are you in the non-resident observation status? Are you rewriting the language? Where does that stand now?
So we started the process. It's not an overnight process, but it's one of many initiatives that we've started since I arrived. And I do believe we will be successful. What we have here that we should actually very much treasure is the nations in this hemisphere overall are very like-minded. Mm-hmm. And that's how we could win as a hemisphere and as a country within the hemisphere. Taking advantage, we generally share the same views and the same values.
Well, sir, we don't have a lot of time left, unfortunately, but let's talk really quickly about some of the initiatives that you're looking forward to over the next several months at the OAS. For instance, we've got elections coming up in Colombia. I think Brazil's holding elections later this year, and then the big question mark is, where does Venezuela fall, and how are you supporting Venezuela in the process towards democracy from the OAS?
Sure. So, elections first. And OAS has many components. The organization itself has been built on 4 pillars, which is sovereignty, democracy, human rights, and development. Development being trade, commerce. Within OAS, we have a treasured component, which is election observation. And it's treated as a separate body to preserve its own integrity. And this group goes country by country. It's on the way to Colombia to participate in election observation there, as well as methodology. They contribute quite well in that capacity as well.
It's a significant portion of what the OAS is working.
But what's most important to point to in respect to the OAS election observation team, totally respected throughout the hemisphere, tremendous integrity that they've earned. It's not, you're not given integrity, you earn integrity. They have that throughout the hemisphere, so even when you have countries that sometimes are diabolically, maybe not on the same page, OAS is welcomed. OAS will play a role in Venezuela, OAS will play a role in Haiti, and hopefully will also soon be in Cuba.
And do you have any insight into when we might be able to see more stability, a more exact date in Venezuela in terms of elections?
So I cannot directly speak to that on a a peripheral level, I could say it's probably going to be early next year. I hope that'll be. There's a very defined transition process that they're trying to accomplish, such as the political prison is in Venezuela. Because if we overreacted in trying to, fast track certain aspects in Venezuela, you very well could have put the political prisoners' lives at risk. So there was approximately 1,000, maybe it was a little bit more, but already we got about 50% released. And that is one of our priorities, making sure every life is saved and every one of those prisoners are released. And I believe they're doing, I would like them all to be released already, but I believe we're doing a pretty good job in that capacity as the United States and our pressure, on the Venezuelan government.
Last question, and then we'll wrap up. Looking forward, what do you see the relevancy of the OAS continuing to be beyond your tenure? Do you see the OAS holding up for the long term? Do we need to make some more adjustments in the short term to make that happen?
I like to leave every place I visit better than when I arrived. And I believe and hope that it'll be left so much better that, yes, it will have a vibrant future. Literally, the day I arrived, I took, as Kennedy took the food pyramid and flipped it upside down, I took the whole model of OAS and said we have to flip it upside down. So just quickly to leave with, we have those 4 pillars. 99% of the resources and the spending were on 3 pillars, and less than 1% was on development and trade. And I pointed out, literally my first day there, I said, that's what pays the electric bill. That's what pays the salaries. That's what pays for the projects.
Right.
So at the minimum, we need it to be equally distributed to 25%. But if you want to talk about the legacy, shifting to development and that impact in this hemisphere has a direct correlation to all the conversations we've had on this stage thus far on China and our concerns, because there's no greater tool or weapon you could use with your anxiety over China than the creation of jobs. If you want to be more important than the guy with the checkbook, the completely open and ended checkbook, be the guy that employs the people. Be the guy that gives the people prosperity, allows an individual to feed their family, to be part of their community with pride, to hold their head up. That will make the difference, and that will be the legacy I hope to very much contribute to.
Well, Mr. Ambassador, you've given us many things to think about today. Thank you so much for your time and all your insights.
Very welcome. Glad to be here.